Kia ora and welcome to the Aotearoa Rugby Pod once again. We've got a big show for you. We're going to start off with a special guest. We'll get through a few big things from the week as well, including a Mount Rushmore of rookie seasons. Our special guest coming up is Brad Weber. We'll talk about Andrew Hoare as well, the Blues CEO, who's talking about the governance of Super Rugby and how they could change the way that the competition works, and of course some time for your feedback. The usual customers with me, as ever, James Parsons in studio.
Yeah, mate.
And Bryn Hall all the way over in Japan on a winning streak and feeling good.
Yeah, mate. It's bloody good win against Panasonic. So, 47 games, I think they're unbeaten. So, yeah, it was a great ride, and the Shinkansen back home was a long 2-hour ride. So, a few bibbies, which was really nice. And
also joining us, Chiefs captain, All Black, on top of the table, Brad Weber. Things are going all right for you.
G'day, guys. Thanks for having me on. It's been a while. Things are going pretty well. Pretty happy with our start, obviously. And Brad, I didn't actually catch any of the Japanese games on the weekend, but I didn't realise you beat Panasonic, mate. That's huge.
Yeah, it was, mate. We owed them one. They beat us. What did they beat us the second round in the last 30 seconds? So, it was a hell of a win. And like I said, the Shinkansen home was pretty good. So if you ever do get over to Japan, mate, Shinkansens, they go pretty well, my friend.
A few strong zeros.
Yeah, just a few to get it going.
Getting on the strongs. That's bad memories right there. Now, Brad, in the space of 8 weeks, you guys have gone from dark horse to competition leaders, unbeaten favourites. Tell us a little bit about what that's been like within the camp, the body language, the way things are working so well.
Certainly there's an air of confidence around with a lot of guys that comes with playing really well. And I think you're seeing a lot of those guys that are sort of around their sort of third or fourth Super Rugby season really stepping up and proving that they're meant to be here and taking that next step, which is really what we needed, because I guess you always know what you're going to get out of your Brodie Retallicks, your Sam Canes. But it was that next tier that I think was challenged to really step up this year, and a lot of them have, man. You look at just the guys in our back three at the moment, the confidence and the way they're playing, and a couple of young midfielders that are stepping up and playing really well as well. So, yeah, it's been pretty good at the moment. Things are running pretty slick.
I'm interested in the boys in front of you that are laying the platform, of course. But it does look like it's a little bit less is more. They look really clear in their head, not a lot of clutter, and looking to, I suppose, get that good set piece, but also that work around the breakdown and the defence.
You know, when those guys are really clear of mind, they can, just let instincts take over and play what you see and play on top, which has been great. And you spoke about the breakdown work. I mean, that's really key for us. We felt last year we got beaten up, particularly by the Crusaders and the Blues there, and it really stifled our game. And when you got the backline that we've got, you really need that good ball. And I'd say our forward pack probably took that a bit personally, actually, and really wanted to do something about it. And so far, they've really stepped up and given us some relatively clean ball. But yeah, that full pack, mate, like you say, it's pretty special. I look across to them every day and think, man, I'm glad they're on my team.
I do have a follow-up question. I know you won't like singling people out, but one player in particular, Tupavai, obviously Brodie is we know what we get with Brodie, but some of his extra efforts, getting those, those line-out turnovers on the weekend that led to big plays, obviously pushing Beauden Barrett into that dead ball line, he seems to have come of age and really pushing his case for higher honours and more minutes.
Mate, he's been seriously impressive this season. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. He's doing a lot of those things that I guess don't take talent. It's all attitude and effort, and that's what you love to see a lot. Like that doesn't get seen a lot on the tally by the punters, but we, and behind the scenes when we're reviewing games, we absolutely love it and celebrate it as much as possible. And mate, he's a serious footballer, one of the best athletes I've seen running around, and even things like he's got a big, fast, explosive left foot step that he's made a few people look silly on. And you talked about all those little things, the line out turnovers on the weekend and forcing Brodie into the end goal a couple of weeks ago. It's just it's huge. And yeah, we've always known Toops' talent. It's been pretty clear to see. But he's putting in the work and fulfilling his potential and some. So it's great to see, and it's obviously had a huge benefit for us.
I think it was maybe 2020 or 2021 year, the COVID year. You had a lot of injuries and a lot of young guys through that kind of period, and now you kind of reaping the rewards of that kind of consistency. What has Clayton brought to that group? Because you can definitely see you guys are a lot more consistent. You've got a real stern, work ethic behind you. And I'd just like to see what Clayton's kind of done since that kind of going from Warren Gatland to his transition.
It's a good question, bro. You're right about your first point. Like, we went on that massive losing streak in 2020 and 2021, had a lot of injuries, and it forced a lot of those young guys to get a lot more game time than they probably would have got had there not been those injuries. And yeah, we lost games, but we built a hell of a lot of depth. And now that we've got a lot of guys that are healthy, touch wood, we're sort of reaping the benefits. I mean, we just talked about Tupou Vai'i there. He was a 19-year-old kid back then, and now we're sort of seeing the benefit of all that game time. Samasoni Takiaho is another one. So many of these guys that were forced to play more and thrown in the deep end a little bit, and now we're reaping the benefits. And then you talk about Clayton, mate. He's been really, really impressive as a head coach for me. He's got a really good eye for little bits of detail in our game that we're not quite getting right. I think, I don't know, me especially, I probably look at a lot of big picture, our whole attack shape, our strikes and stuff, what we didn't do well, what we are doing well. He looks even further in depth than I would ever think. And so, like, he really challenges the boys there. And you're talking about, like, bringing a bit of steel. Well, he certainly demands it. And he's just got that aura about him that he just kind of demands respect, and you got to really do what he says, or the big cop in him will come out and come down on you. So you don't want to let the big man down. But mate, he's been really good, man. He's a hell of a head coach, and he's been great for us since he's come in.
Do the reviews look like a forensic investigation today?
Interrogation.
Sometimes, yeah. He's probably asking you a question like cops do, and they know if you're lying, so you can't bullshit.
Yeah. Fair enough. You mentioned kind of the respect he has in the room. There is something about a mana on the man. You know what I mean? And for our Northern Hemisphere viewers, mana's, it's respect. I suppose it's the aura that you carry because of the respect that you carry. He has that in spades, doesn't he? Was that from the day one, from the moment he walked in, you guys were just like, well, this guy's got something? I
think so. A lot of us had a bit to do with him when he was the Māori All Blacks head coach, and sort of knew what he brought then. And then obviously with the Chiefs region having a very strong connection with Waikato Tainui and the rest of the tribes around the Chiefs region, he was pretty huge in that respect in terms of connecting with the community and that sort of thing. So I guess he naturally brings a bit of respect and mana there. And but I guess we also see now, like, all the work he does, particularly at the start of the week, in terms of setting mindset and for the week and for the season. He's just got a really good feel on where the squad's at, what individual needs are, like certain guys need to be pushed certain ways and others need to be treated differently. It's a really impressive skill that I don't think everybody has, but he's certainly got it. And to be honest, like, as a captain with Sam, I don't feel like we have to do that much, because he nails a lot of where the squad's at. And, a lot of the time, like, if he would come to us with an idea, we end up just being like, yep, we agree with that. Like, it's pretty spot on. So, he makes life pretty good for us. We can just focus on leading the group and on the field and stuff like that. So, mate, you can probably tell I can't really speak much more highly of the bloke.
What the best head coaches always do is they surround themselves with potentially their weakness. So they've got that great self-awareness, and he's brought in someone like Paul Feeney, who's got massive amount of experience across Super Rugby and across World Rugby. How have you found him coming into the group?
Have you been coached by Rata?
I certainly have. I certainly have.
Yeah. He's a unique character, isn't he? He's
full of energy.
But he's been great. Like, and especially when we lost another character like Neil Barnes, he was great with the group. Red has really fitted in seamlessly, and I think Donkin worked a little bit with Paul at Bad Plenty a few years ago. So they've obviously got a bit of history there. But like he's been great, and like you mentioned around surrounding yourself with like good guys that cover up your weaknesses or whatever. But a lot of our assistant coaches have been fantastic. Like I've been seriously impressed with Roger Randall and the attacking shapes that he has come up with this season for us really suits our team profile. And I think you're sort of seeing a lot of that freedom because of the game plan that he's brought to us at the start of preseason, and we all believe in it, and it's been great. And then Rad has jumped on a little bit around counter-attack and exits and brought his little flavour that all suits. And then David Hill's been our defence coach, and that's come along obviously leaps and bounds from a few years ago. So they're certainly, as a group, working really well together. And I didn't even mention Ross Filippo and Mick White. They're going pretty good too. Floss has been a great addition to us as well. I mean, he does lineouts and mauls and stuff. I don't really know what he's doing, but I'm sure he's doing something good because it's going all right.
Just on there, Brad, obviously probably a little bit different for you guys in your Chiefs tenure, having obviously going undefeated and being the favourites, you'd have to think, for the Super Rugby title. How have you guys been managing those expectations within the group? I know you'd obviously be getting your preparation week to week, but I guess more so in your leadership group, how are you guys trying to, I guess, keep the team on week to week kind of mindset?
Yeah, it's actually an interesting question, Brenner. I guess
He's got two interesting ones.
we really want to keep growing the confidence in the group. Like it's high, and we're trying to really celebrate the areas that we're leading the competition in and continue to grow that area so we stay on top. But I don't think, I guess, favoritism for the title or anything like that has been spoken about at all yet. Did you guys speak about it much through your 6 years? I mean, I know it's a slightly different thing, but maybe we could learn.
Just throwing out a bit of bait. I was throwing out a bit of bait for all the teams, mate. I'm just trying to get a bit of bait out of you, so you're passing the test very well.
I'm going to jump outside of my lane here, Brad, and talk about that 9-10 combo that you've got going at the moment. Pretty special. Damian's playing the house down. I'm just keen to know what's working for you, but also what are the areas you guys are looking to get better at?
Damo and I have played together for, I think this might be our 10th year together. So I guess naturally you kind of act a little bit on instinct. I sort of know where he's going to be or what he's looking for in different situations. So that's really helped. Like, certainly, like we've both come a long way since our Waikato days in 2014 and 15. I think we would just try and run ourselves out of trouble. Every situation we could get, we'd get ourselves into a fair bit of trouble as well. But geez, we'd score some fun tries right doing that style as well. But obviously you can't get away with that much at Super Rugby level. And what I've been really impressed with Damian in particular is his game management that he's really grown. Sorry, look at this, right? My cat's trying to get in the picture. That's off. Can we start that one again?
Is it still a time?
Yeah. That would have been good.
When things aren't going so well, when we've had a couple of, I guess, negative game line carries, what do we do? Those sorts of situations that we were constantly trying to get better. And that's the thing that we talk about the most together is leading the team around the park. And I think you're seeing it with Damian's triple threat at the moment. His kicking game's been fantastic. He's put us in some great positions and put other teams under a lot of pressure with his kicking game. And then he can obviously run when he sees a knife for a gap, and he's got a great passing game as well. So, yeah, he's really turning into the full package. He's not just the chaotic runner that we used to see. He's still got that in him and creates things out of nothing, which we love. And we want to keep encouraging him to do that. And now he's just really got the balance.
I was interested in how you run the following support lines for Damian, how you know you're going to get to the right place for the ruck when he doesn't know where he's going either.
The short answer is I actually don't know either. But I literally, if I see him about to do what he's going to do, I'll just sit right in the defensive line and just be ready to sprint either way and either catch up with him or get back to the ruck if he's been caught. So, yeah, he's like a guy on an adventure without a map, but it works for him.
Christian, I wanted to ask you, when you have those individual battles, whether it be Perenara, Smith, the likes of Cam Roygo that's come up through on the weekend has been a bit of hype. How do you try and approach those weeks when you've got a big opponent coming up, like an All Black incumbent? Is there a different process that you go with trying to, obviously you want to play well in those moments, but does it change a lot? Anything change a lot when you're playing those halfbacks?
I reckon I used to a lot, and it would probably consume me a little bit 4 or 5 years ago, and I'd often not play that well. Now I just, like you'll understand this, Brett, like when the team goes well and the team goes forward, the 9 tends to go pretty well as well. So I try and focus on my job and steering the team around and letting the team do the talking for me. And I know that if I do my core roles right, I can let my points of difference shine if those situations ever come with my running lines and support lines and my speed and stuff. So there's some great 9s coming around the country at the moment, playing some really good rugby, man. It's so you got to be on your toes. You can never think your spot is locked in at all. So and so you mentioned Cam before. Obviously played him on the weekend, and he's having a hell of a season, putting a lot of pressure on a lot of guys. So,
Brad, you're talking about the good halfbacks around the country. What we want to know is your best halfbacks of all time. We're going to go into a Mount Rushmore later in the show, a Mount Rushmore of best rookie seasons ever. But before we get there, your Mount Rushmore of halfbacks, who are the 4 guys that you just, above all else, just rate?
Okay, so Brad Weber and Bryn Hall will be first 2 in there. Okay, I'll answer this seriously, I guess. I still love George Gregan. So he'd be on there. That probably piss a few people off at home watching this. Aaron Smith's got to be on there. Nuggy's got to be on there, change the game. And then for me, Joost van der Westhuizen, South Africa. And my last one would be Augustine Pichot from Argentina. And you'll see a bit of a theme there for me. I used to like the smaller guys that punch above their weight. So they were always my favourites. They're on my Mount Rushmore.
Yes, good. I like that.
Oh, mate, I'm all for it.
I like that.
For it. It's. I don't want to step out of my lane again, so I'll just keep my powder dry.
Oh, is that similar to yours, Brent?
I had 2 of them. I had Nuggy and George Gregan. But then I had, you can't go past DuPont. I know he's obviously before his time. He's probably got a lot more to go. But, man, we talk about revolutionising the game. We've said a lot on this podcast around how he's changing the game and how, I guess, halfbacks are perceived at the moment. But then I also had Fourie du Preez. I used to love watching Fourie du Preez for South Africa. I think, a World Cup winner, was really good around game management. Brad touched on it with halfbacks. I think his game management, along with George Gregan, you'd have to arguably say they were the top 2 around the world. So pretty similar, 2 out of the 4. But still be a Pichot. I love the Pichot call. He was great for Argentina. So it's a good call from Brad.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, mate. Before we go, let's give a mention to your Give a Little page. You've teamed up with the Hawke's Bay Foundation to do a Give a Little page to give back to the people of your region post-cyclone. That's going pretty well.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you guys giving it a shout out on here. And I think it was done pre-game on the weekend too, which has really helped with the reach and got a few big donations out of that. So I really appreciate it. But yeah, it's going really well. I think I set a goal initially of about 10 grand and it's ticked over that already. So I'm going to have to rethink on maybe reach for a bit higher than that. But no, it's going really well. And Gareth Evans and I gave away our 50th Super Rugby jerseys as a package to anyone that donated. We sort of put it all in a raffle and raffled that off. And a guy that put in I think bought like five, basically put in $25. He ended up winning them. So that's pretty cool. That was the reason we did it. We wanted to give everybody a crack at being able to win them. And it's going to a great cause, the Hawke's Bay Foundation there, putting the money to where it's needed most. I've put a few $100,000 to rural mental health, which has been huge for the people around there that are they've lost everything rurally in Puketapu and Estale, and they're doing a hell of a lot more else as well. I guess through the season, I'm personally donating a couple of bucks for every pass that I make, and I've been making a fair few recently, so it's costing me a fair bit. But
you've got to run a bit.
I'm encouraging people to jump in with me, either $1 or $2 a pass, and I'm putting up one of my All Blacks Test jerseys for people that do that. So they've got a chance to win one of my match-worn Test jerseys. I don't have too many of them; they mean a lot to me. So I'll be giving one of those away, and then I've got a few other things as well. Samasoni Tokyo gave me a signed All Blacks jersey to raffle off to people that donate as well, and Ruby Tui actually gave me one of her signed Blackfern Sevens jerseys to give away as well. So there'll be a few more things. Keep an eye on my socials and get amongst and donate to a bloody good cause that's going to a lot of people that need it.
Well, Brad, the Zoom meeting is about to kick us off. So we get the countdown, 13, 12, 11. So thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for helping out that cause, mate, and good luck. Go all the way as far as I'm concerned.
Legend. Thanks for that, mate. Appreciate you. Cheers, fellas.
See you, mate.
Good on you, Brad. Good on you, bro.
So big thanks to Brad Weber for joining us and talking all about the Chiefs and how well they're going. Chippo, wow, that second half. You know, the stats during the game were saying that the Canes are a second half team and the Chiefs, they're a first half team.
Yeah,
Didn't turn out that way.
No, not at all. And I made mention to the people I was watching it with that exactly that. Like the Canes will come over the top normally, but I suppose we saw that against the Blues in their other loss, but they just couldn't get their game going. And if you look at the stats, there's one area that the Chiefs were almost double, and that was their kicking stats. They're around 1,100 metres. I think it was 1,142 metres versus about 680. So they came with a clear tactic that they were going to play at the right end of the field. But I'd say probably two of the tries that sort of turned the game was on the back of errors from the Hurricanes. Obviously a long-range try, but then the Cortez Ratima's one at that 60-minute mark, giving that scrum and then him scoring, sort of turned the game on its head and meant the Hurricanes were probably chasing, and they sort of put themselves in a position and they probably didn't deserve to be in just through that one area, especially at line-out time. There was two mistakes at line-out time that led to those tries.
Bryn, did you feel like it was kind of a men from the boys kind of moment there with the two top teams on the table?
I think it was, and I just think the Chiefs' defense in the second half was outstanding. I think they were tackling at 89%, but I think the amount of times you look at that kind of 68 to 74th minute, the Hurricanes were down in that 22 area zone and weren't able to get over the try line. You're talking around that overthrow, but our team kicks it, goes to the end of the goal zone from coast to coast, and then they end up scoring a try off that in the 74th minute. So the Hurricanes definitely had the opportunities, but I think Roger Randall had it on at half-time around the physicality and not getting that, and I think the ill-discipline, 9 penalties in that first half, being able to give opportunities for the Hurricanes to attack, and then they shored that up with only 5 in the second half. And I thought Damian McKenzie, again, you'd have to arguably say he's the best 10 running around the competition with how he's influencing the game. Not only that 50-metre goal kick, which I thought was pivotal in that moment of the game, but then that last try, then 77th minute to put the icing of the game. He's in a rich reign of form, and I think arguably he's booked his ticket to a Rugby World Cup for sure.
You mentioned the defence, Bryn, and I think you're right around that physicality, because the Hurricanes are, every week, they're sort of 55-plus side in terms of gain line with ball in hand. We know they're power athletes. You saw Artie, I thought Duplessis Karifi was massive on the weekend. Brother Julian, and you could go on through that team, but the Chiefs kept them to 45.9% gain line, which is really low for that Hurricanes side with the power athletes they've got. So that physicality and that defensive pressure definitely was a big part. It wasn't just the, I suppose, pouncing on the Hurricanes' mistakes that won this game. It was that sort of attrition throughout the 80 minutes really, I suppose, sucked the tank dry and stopped the Hurricanes behind the game line, which is not an area they're probably used to in the first few weeks of this comp.
A lot of that comes down to your mates up front.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I also think you've got to give a bit of credit to Poihipi and Rona, I think, probably not guys that you would have penciled in to be in the 12 and 13 jersey. And man, they're making a great fist of it, both sides of the ball. And I think, that 13 jersey in particular in most teams defensively is probably a key cog in terms of being able to know and read the guys inside and out. But yeah, numbers 1 to 8 are doing the business, and the guys that are coming off the bench and adding the impact. I just think just shows you competition for spaces. World Cup year, All Black jersey up, like it is bringing the best out of every number in that Chiefs outfit at the moment.
Bryn, for me, when I look at that Chiefs pack, it's not necessarily that they're all superstars, but they've all been there for a while now. They've spent some time together. They know each other. They know their role. It's kind of a maturation and a payoff on investment from the Chiefs. When
Warren Gatland was selected in that 2020 year, they had a lot of injuries in that first bulk of that 2020 year, and they had a lot of guys that were able to, with the likes of Arkoi, Feeney, like those kind of players in the and even Tupo Vai, young Tupo Vai. They were given experience at that kind of time period, and now what are we now? 3 years later, and all those guys have been able to experience big footy games and been able to add more experience in their games with games and matches. So I think you look at Peter Gus-Sowakula. I thought he was great on the weekend. Probably hasn't been where he wanted to. But, with the competition of Feeney and that loose forward trio, guys coming back like him, like Peter Gus coming on, having a great game, it's adding depth into that squad. And I think we've talked about it a lot, especially in the back end of the season. You've got to be having all the depth in your squad, because if there are injuries, they've proven that they have the ability to be able to use, whether it be the starting 8 or then the guys that are just outside the fringe, come on and make an impact. You can see that clearly with that Chiefs forward pack at the moment. And for you as an NRL fan, I remember Daniel Anderson saying that he reckons it takes 50 NRL games for a player to be, really super valuable to an NRL squad. How long do you think it takes a Super Rugby player to reach the point where they have the knowledge of the game, that they bring that kind of value?
Yeah, I think obviously because we have a number of teams, it's definitely not 50. I think you've been around quite a long time by the time you get to 50 Super games. So it's probably around 2.5 seasons, 50 NRL games. So I think you're looking around that sort of 25, 30 that they're starting to come in their own and really mature. And I think you can see that a lot. If we use the Blues as an example, a lot of those players that are now reaching into that sort of 25, 30 cap range, sometimes 40, are really coming of age. I think some positions are a little bit easier to probably get a grasp on it. Like I think probably outside backs is one where you've seen a lot of stories of guys coming in straight away and being able to perform very, very well. I think inside backs, myself as an example, I probably think it takes just a touch a little bit longer. There's so many game management things and understandings. I think for me, it was my 4th or 5th year that I really got a good grasp defensively and an attacking understanding of how to win games in those kind of scenarios. But I think for most positions, really, I agree with Jip, is that 2 to maybe 3 seasons of being able to understand what situations are like in rugby and then being able to go implement and play your game at a high level. Unfortunately, because the reality is there's a long line behind you. I think if you haven't done it by 2 to 3 seasons, you're probably not going to have a contract in the 4th. Right. To be ruthless, like that's the environment we live in. And I think it's the same in NRL, like it's 2 to 3 seasons, and that's probably that mark that Daniel Anderson, and if you're not making it, you're going to obviously get dropped down to a different level where you won't get signed. I think when you're at that 25 to 30, you have the mental ability to know that one mistake doesn't make a game, and you can switch in to your next role pretty quickly, and because your skill set's there. You don't get to that level and selected if you don't have the skill set. It's just, I think you learn to control your own thoughts in your own mind so that you can execute straight after a mistake, because you're going to make them. I think the more time as an inside back that you're out there, you're experiencing things, you're going to have your licks, but at the same time, you learn from that experience. And then once you get to that kind of 30, 40 game, you've been in different scenarios. Hopefully, if you've been successful, you understand what that looks like. And then, again, it just becomes second nature, and then you're able to influence and play more consistently, especially in the inside backs pairing. Sometimes people just hit the scene and they're just on fire. And Miracle Fai'ilagi is that guy this year from Moana Pasifika. They went down 28-40, but boy, he's an athlete. Yeah, what I like most about him, and I'm going to sound like a broken record, but a lot of the plays that he becomes involved in that becomes the highlight, or he's on the end for tries, is just his work off the ball to put himself in that position. Like a lot of players would give up on a lot of support lines that he's shown up for, not just on the weekend, but previous games. And I think it's his want and his desire and his love for the game. Like, he's just doing it with a smile on his face, and he's prepared to go to that dark place to put himself in a position to make a difference. And you can just see him growing in confidence. He is just getting better and better each week. But it's also the players around him are growing in confidence with him. So he's becoming more of a key cog, but probably more so in their attacking game and utilising his sort of like I'm trying to think who to liken him to, but he's just got that maybe like an Isaac Ross, in between like an Isaac Ross and maybe more of a Jerome Kaino. Like, he's just got that rangy way about him. He's not physically massive, but I think the more time he spends in the professional area, he'll get bigger and bigger towards more of the Jerome. But he just seems like a sort of in between, sort of a power athlete, but also has the ability to have that grunt.
He's pretty similar to Via Fafita, I thought.
Yeah,
That's it.
Power athlete.
It's almost like for like, actually. You remember that game Fafita played against Argentina, and he it's just the long legs and it's the speed they can get up to, but then they've got that physical presence as well. And I feel like Miracle's just one of those players that now, being in a full-time professional environment and having access to that coaching ability, it has been massive for his, pretty quick progression at Super Rugby level against some, formidable loose forwards. Especially that Reds team, they were on fire. And he's talk about guys that I call Fraser McWhirter the little mini hooper. He's like, he's the best supports line, sort of speedster, gets over the breakdown. And he's mixing it with the big boys, Miracle is, so it's exciting.
If you've missed the Miracle Fai'ilagi story, it's a pretty interesting one. Like, he was a sevens player, but he got picked up into this team, Moana Pasifika, out of a combine, a World Rugby combine. So this is the system working. Finding a talented player, getting them into Super Rugby. MP picked him up, and here we are. He's having a rookie season to die for. So all of this conversation has led to this. Another Mount Rushmore. Okay, so what we really want to get to the bottom of is the Mount Rushmore of rookie seasons. The best seasons we've seen, your first year at the top level of first class outside of test matches. So, boys, let's set some ground rules. So it's got to be your first year in first class rugby. I know, Jip, you got some problems. I was thinking post-96, so we had the same setup across the board, but you're thinking...
Well, I'm just learning from my mistakes.
Yeah. And
last time we went a bit new age, so yeah. I'm just saying I'm gonna have a wide scope in terms, and I suppose it's more, it's going to be more players that I grew up watching. But yeah, I know we may need to agree to disagree. On that one, and we'll just move forward with our own. I think you could have 20 of these. Yeah. You and I were having a bit of fun on Saturday with how many we could come up with, and it's actually been very hard to get it down to 4.
Okay, to make it a little bit easy for us, because we're not super old and we also can't watch every rugby game in the entire world, we're making it New Zealand-based rookie seasons. And rookie season, I was going to be soft on this, but Jipper's going a little bit harder. Rookie seasons has got to mean the very first time you played Super Rugby. So even if you came off the bench in one game, that is your rookie year. So that's ruled out Rupeni Thauthaunbutha, who played one game for the Blues in 2002, scored 2 tries in that game, but the next year went absolute gangbusters.
Yeah, it's his second season.
That's his second season. Sorry, Rupeni. You're not in this. It was an amazing second season, but that's a second season because we've got some pretty hard taskmasters in here. Did you know he only played 14 games all up for the Blues?
I know. That's
14.
Incredible. Was it that 03?
That's it.
Only 14?
Yeah. If you think about a legacy left by least games, if we did a Mount Rushmore of that, there's no doubt that
he's in it.
He's
in it.
Wow.
100%.
Okay. So with all of that said, who, Chipper, is on your Mount Rushmore?
Right. In no particular order, I went Christian Cullen. He was massive in his breakout year and obviously making the All Blacks.
96.
Yeah. Richie McCaw.
Then again, he did play 94, 95 NPC before.
The Central Vikings.
Yeah. So not First Division.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. No offence to Central Vikings. But, so I've got Cullen in there. Richie McCaw. obviously first year Crusaders, and then went on to the All Blacks. Sean Fitzpatrick, so 86, and then obviously Andy Dalton went down and he went into the ABs, and the rest is history. And then I think the pinnacle of it, Jonah Lomu.
So 2 wingers to finish off there.
Yeah. Fitzy still had the graft up front, but he did know how. He was the first version of Dane Coles.
Yeah, that's a good team.
Yeah, I'm happy with it.
Yeah,
there's some legends in there. 2 pretty good skippers too.
Yeah. Oh, to be fair, Jonah had some tough times in his first season,
but he got there.
But he got there in 95.
He got there in 94, mate. 94, got him into the All Blacks. It was good enough for me.
Okay, great. Youngest ever All Black. That's pretty solid. What about
going
you,
from
Bryn?
number 8 to wing?
Yeah.
I've got a couple of similar ones. I've gone McCaw. I think you can't go past Richie. I think having him in the Mount Rushmore was good as well. I actually went Brodie Retallick, his 2012 year. I think when he came on the scene, he was probably pretty pivotal in that Chiefs first win and overall win. And then I've also went Dan Carter, I think, as well. He was pretty good around his first experience to be able to get into the All Blacks in his debut. I know he obviously went for Canterbury, but correct me if I'm wrong, he did go from Super Rugby straight into the All Blacks, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he did.
Yep. And then last, I've actually gone for Sevu Reece. His year that he had in 2019, he was not contracted. He came in as a training member, ended up making his debut for the Crusaders, debuted for the All Blacks, and then finished off that year playing in the semi-final starting in 2019. So, he had a hell of a year in his debut year, which I thought, starting at Super Rugby. So that's my Rushmore right there.
That is pretty solid. Sevu Reece is a good outsider. I'm going with Nehe Milner-Skudder, 2015. Out of rugby league, into rugby, straight into the All Blacks, wins a World Cup.
And was World Rookie Player
of the Year, and we barely saw him again afterwards. He, had a lot of injuries, but geez, did he burn bright.
He did.
Absolutely bright. So he's definitely in mine. Christian Cullen, 96. What else do you have to say? I suppose the hard part for me was, what do you do with the tight forwards? Because like you said earlier, outside backs, I think Bryn said it actually, outside backs come in and can shine bright immediately because that's the nature of the role. So do you actually do a weighting here for tight forwards and say an outstanding first year for a tight forward / loose forward is actually worth more, in a way, because it's so much harder to make a name for yourself?
Yeah, I definitely think tight forwards, you very rarely see it. And most of the ones that do make the All Blacks in their rookie year actually have gone on to be some of our greatest ever tight forwards. So you can weight it too, but I mean, it's just a bit of fun. I think everyone will have their differences, but I mean, I can think of one that I left out, and I'm sure he's filthy on me, is Tony Woodcock. But it's tough to whittle it down to 4.
Tony Woodcock wouldn't be filthy on you. He'd be embarrassed to be named and not want the attention.
No, don't misunderstand Mr. Woodcock. He likes the limelight.
Oh, really?
No, I'm joking.
So to finish off my squad, Brodie Retallick, 2012.
Yeah.
Won Super Rugby, straight into the All Blacks, and has been a sensation ever since. Have you heard that story about Brodie copping a couple of knocks in his first couple of trainings and realising how to go hard at training, and then goes around smashing people from there on in? And from that moment, see you later, the world. This guy is on the list for greatest lock of all time.
Absolutely.
So Brodie Retallick is definitely in there for me. And then I want as a little dark horse here, in a way, because as a back, he wasn't like the sensation scoring tries or all those kind of things. He was the glue guy. Conrad Smith, 2004, first year for the Hurricanes, straight into the All Blacks, and was basically the All Blacks starting centre from there on in. No fuss, no nonsense. Didn't have all this hoopla or anything like that about him. Just did his job well, and then did it until he, left.
But also allowed others to do their job very well.
Yeah.
Which I think was his biggest superpower in the teams he played in. And I suppose he's come in with no fuss. He left the game with no fuss, and still pretty happy-go-lucky guy that's still contributing to rugby around the world.
Yeah, highly recommended. Joe Rokithoko,
yeah, that's
2003. The only reason Milner-Skudder got the World Cup titles, so I went with him. But those first 2 years, Joe Rokithoko, all those tries.
It was just tries galore.
Yeah.
What was his strike rate? Well, his strike rate was unreal.
Early on, it was ridiculous.
I think he scored like 14 or 17 or something in his first year of Test rugby. Like, it was crazy.
It was definitely over 2 his first year. He was scoring more than 2 a game.
It was nuts.
Sam Whitelock's another one.
Yep.
He's hard to leave out. Like, young man, type 5, straight into the All Blacks, and he hasn't gone anywhere. So, as I say, those type 5 members, the ones that actually do make it, normally, they have to be pretty special to get into that engine room.
Well, he got rid of Ali Williams. I mean, Ali
Williams is another one.
Yeah.
It made the All Blacks in his first year.
Yeah.
There's plenty on there.
That's right. But not Rupini Thauthaumbuta, unfortunately, because he got very, very strict.
Sever Reece could be in the similar boat, Played a lot of years for, NPC. But I'll let you have it, Bryn. I'll let you have it. It's a nice story. It's a nice story.
It is. I saw Super Rugby. I was like, well, I'm lucky here.
I've been fended off by Sever Reece well before 2019. I can give you the tip.
At least you were there to be fended.
Yeah, well, I grabbed air. He sort of disappeared.
Yeah, off he went.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Fair enough. Okay, so plenty of Blues players on that, actually. Interestingly, there was a really good discussion with Andrew Hoare from the Blues, the CEO. A different Andrew Hoare for those of you who are watching internationally. Not Andrew Hoare, the former All Blacks hooker. Andrew Hoare, the businessman who used to run the Waratahs and now runs the Blues. He comes on and he's grinding an axe, really. He was really pushing a point about basically Super Rugby clubs being able to govern themselves, to build their own brands, to build the competition, and to not have the competition simply act as an All Blacks trial. He reckons the current model is set up. So basically, the All Blacks make the money funnels down, and everything else is set up to make the All Blacks succeed. And he feels Super Rugby won't succeed until they approach Super Rugby as a competition that deserves to succeed by itself and pay its own way. What was your reaction to that?
I'm probably not surprised, to be honest. Like, you can understand it from a Super Rugby CEO's point of view, having full control of sort of their setup and environment, and they want to go about winning titles. And I'm sure that probably the other 4 CEOs think the same, and it's the same across the ditch. But with everything. With that comes, if you use French rugby and release windows and all those sorts of things, what impact does it have? Similar to what we've sort of spoken about previously, like with every string you pull, there will be consequences. So potentially, maybe there's a middle ground to be met somewhere, and maybe having certain governance structures for the competition as a whole, or whatever it may look like moving forward. But at the moment it's a license agreement, and that's the world we live in, and I think it's not a bad thing that someone's challenging the way, because that's how change comes about, and that's how we potentially get to a better situation for the game as a whole. But you can see his motives, like he wants this product to be the very best version of it, bring fans back to stadiums, bring eyes back to the TV screens, and he's a really passionate man, and he's seriously motivated for what he wants to achieve, not only at the Blues, but actually for this competition as a whole.
And does the competition as a whole need to be able to be free of being a trial for the All Blacks? I mean, that's basically what we spend our time on this show talking about.
Players do need a rest, like especially when you're playing this amount of time. Whether they want the autonomy to run when that rest is, I suppose NZR feel it is an inclusive process. Obviously, maybe they don't feel that way, but that can't just be the only motivator. There must be other motivators in terms of, he talks about governance. That's got nothing to do with load management. So there's other elements to it. I'm probably not, in a position to know enough information to make a call on, whether it would work or not. But as I say, I stress that you need people to challenge things to get change, because sometimes change can be the best thing for everyone.
Maybe to frame the question in a different way for you then, Bryn, as a player, did you feel that there was enough focus on Super Rugby as a standalone competition within New Zealand, enough of it to allow it to succeed to the point where stands are full and the promotion is right and all of those elements?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think so. I think the problem I find is the competitiveness and probably the competition itself. And that's not to say that Super Rugby isn't a great brand to watch, and there has been innovation and around trying to make the game better, which we've seen this year. But I just look at the difference between the competition in the Northern Hemisphere and to where we are. The competitiveness in our competition probably just isn't where it needs to be at the moment. I think the Australian teams aren't pulling finger in that respect. And that's no disrespect, though. I think it's just the reality. Like, you have to look at the success rate and how many wins they've got against New Zealand teams. It's pretty horrendous. And so, you're looking at games when New Zealand teams are playing Australian teams. If you're a consumer, you're probably thinking, well, I'm not going to go watch this game and watch it on TV because I already know the outcome. So I think we have had a bit of change in probably the last 5 years since the competition has left. Since the South Africans have left, and so there's probably been a detriment to the quality of the competition. So, look, I think stressing ideas and trying to innovate and make the game a little bit better. I think we have to probably think outside the box a little bit until I think the competitiveness of the competition is a lot better. Because at the moment, just hearing words and seeing in the media from fans and hearing from fans, going to games is a little bit tougher because it's one-sided. In a lot of the last month, you'd have to think a lot of the scores have been one-sided due to the fact of not being many derbies and New Zealand teams playing Australian teams and beating them pretty convincingly, apart from the Brumbies.
Is that something you would talk about? Because obviously there was a period there while you were playing for the Crusaders, but the Aussie teams didn't win for like 3 years, or was it 2 years, or whatever it was. It was a long time.
I think we understood that, you play a derby game, and the mindset where you needed to be when you play a derby was a little bit different to when you played the Australian teams. Look, you'd go through your due diligence and get your preparation right, and, you never took it for granted. But I think the understanding is knowing that, they're not as strong as New Zealand teams. And so since that Trans-Tasman and COVID, this is the third season now, and, Australian teams are pretty in a similar position where they're not beating New Zealand teams consistently, apart from the Brumbies. So for the sake of the competition, we kind of need the Australian teams to be a lot more competitive in winning games because, you look at the overseas, the games that you want to watch are the competitive games. And so you look at the European Championship, you've got teams from different countries being able to win titles and be competitive in games. So to answer your question, you never took them for granted, but at the same time, self-awareness and understanding that, playing someone like the Force, for example, then playing the Chiefs, the mentality of where you needed to be was a little bit different.
So, we're talking about uncertainty of results is what we want to bring fans back to. I pose the question, how are you going to do that with it being governed? Like, are they going to pull, in terms of, salary caps and things like that? Because obviously the players are paid out of the national pot. The clubs don't pay them directly. So how that would all work, I'm not too sure. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's the only way that you can get, or is it players are coming, maybe it's not the traditional New Zealand sides, Aussie sides, is it, players playing in Aussie and Aussie players playing here, or, I don't know, like, because how are you, like, that's not going to solve that. What we just spoke about then, that's not going to solve it.
I've long been of the point of view that as long as you're playing in Super Rugby, and way back to when the South Africans are playing, or the Juarez, or the Sunwolves, as long as you're playing Super Rugby, you should be available for your national team because you're contributing to the competition that feeds the national team. So it shouldn't matter what country you're in because you're playing against players who are going to be in that national team week in, week out. And if that's the case, and an Aussie team decides it's going to go and pay $2 million for Beauden Barrett to get him over there and get them winning, then that's good for the competition. Why are we standing in the way of that?
Well, I think there's a lot of legacy and I suppose people that have gone before around the All Black jersey. And I think you start doing that, then selecting players from overseas. We've had this discussion before. Everyone's going to have differing views on it. The reality is I'm sure in time again. Disruption and change will happen, and potentially that may be the first step, of that. If you're in Super Rugby Pacific, you have the ability to be selected. I don't know. It
can also be the last step because SANZAAR runs a competition. New Zealand Rugby has a seat at that board and has the ability to control how far that goes, right? Yeah,
I think every stakeholder will have the ability, especially moving forward in the way, I suppose, the joint venture is structured. But as you can see, they're crying out to have more control so that they can potentially control the growth of their business and their bottom line.
Another contribution that we've had from our listeners this week, Jimmy Kipp on YouTube is talking about how he feels that you could enhance the competition by using the provinces more. Obviously there was a good example a couple of weeks ago with Palmerston North for the Hurricanes. Lots of people turned up for that. At the moment, very few games are heading outside of the main centres, Bryn. And he feels like that is an opportunity lost because there are people outside of the main centres who want to be part of Super Rugby and aren't getting the opportunity. We're cutting out a huge proportion of our population.
Yeah, we are. I think there might be some logistics around with the home stadiums. The big, look at the Crusaders, for example. I think you've got to have an X amount of games contracted with that stadium. I'm not too sure what it'd be like, but I can imagine, the Blues have to have a percentage of where they play at Eden Park. But definitely think it opens the door. We should be opening the door around taking it to other provincial unions, taking it to Nelson. I know the time when I was out at the Crusaders, we played in Nelson, the fan engagement that we got there and how happy the players were to be able to go there. We had a lot of guys that played for Tasman who hadn't been able to play at home, for the Crusaders. So I think being able to go to those rural parts of the country, especially for Super Rugby games, is really important because, sometimes when you do see these bigger stadiums, they don't fill out. You can imagine if you're taking the Palmerston North, for example, that was pretty close to a sellout, and that was just the Force playing the Hurricanes, So I think there are a way to be able to have more games in, I guess, the more smaller communities, because I think at the same time, it's good as a spectator to be able to see full crowds, whether that's a small stadium or not. If you're outsider looking in that doesn't watch a lot of Super Rugby, but you see a full stand and say, oh, well, this must be a good brand of footy. Whereas sometimes you see, a lot of spare seats in the big stadiums where you're thinking, it's not like the rugby league. You look at the Warriors, for example, or currently a lot of the NRL sides, they're fully packed games. So, it might be something that we might need to open the doors to get a bit more fan engagement around New Zealand.
That's a good point about the NRL. Brookvale Oval only seats less than 10,000 people. It's packed and it makes for a great event, and that's the thing about these provincial stadiums, is they only fit that many people.
Yep. I mean, I would have loved as a player to go back to Onewa Domain, Blues playing at Onewa Domain. That would have been outstanding.
That was only 4,000 or 5,000 people, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, that's enough.
Yeah.
But and as, again, tongue-in-cheek, I did actually like playing at North Harbour Stadium because that's where I was from, and it was cool to get back there. And I think, you go back to Andrew Hoare talking about running it as a business, it potentially may get to that point because I'm sure opening Eden Park's a lot more expensive than, saying, opening Toll Stadium, and then they can work out, if the numbers are turning up and, it's more effective on the bottom line, then the better. But I'm sure at the end of the day, the home stadiums are the home stadiums, and as Bryn said, there may be contractual obligations that they've got to have a certain amount of games there.
I would imagine, but I'm sure...
And season ticket holders, you do have to consider that, a lot of the season ticket holders will be in the main area, and so what impact does that have on your ability to actually generate money from the ticketing?
Surely you could sell a season ticket to all of the stadiums.
You definitely could, but I'm just saying that you potentially may miss out on a lot more because Auckland's got a bigger population if we use the Blues as an example.
Yeah. And you've got to say, the Hurricanes had a very good crowd for an afternoon footy game on the weekend, 20-odd thousand. But also on the flip side of that, we shouldn't be noticing a 2/3 full stadium and saying, that's quite a full stadium.
Well, yeah, but I think it's the time, we do have to sort of, we've been seeing this for a number of years, people consume a lot differently now. It's proven, through evidence. I mean, I know, Sky have got a lot of evidence around how people are consuming and so forth. So, the glory days of full stadiums, except for All Black tests or Black Ferns tests, is few and far between, but when you get to the pointy end of the competition, I'm sure there'll be more and more fans, and hopefully those stadiums will be full. But it's a reality of sort of the environment we live in. The consumer dollar or the disposable income can only go so far, and there's a lot on offer.
Yeah, I think also just last week we touched on it. I think the competitiveness of the competition is probably leading to that as well. Take away the Derby games, it's probably where you see the most fans coming to watch New Zealand games at the moment. If the competition gets a lot better competitiveness-wise and the Australian teams are winning and there's more of those rivalries because you're not going to know who's going to win the game, I think that's going to add to the fan engagement moving forward. So, like I said, don't want to harp on and have a go at Australian rugby in the teams, but, the sooner that they can start being more competitive and getting wins, I think, fans in New Zealand and consumers will be like, we might go watch this game because, we don't know what the result's going to be.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much again, Bryn. We'll see you next week. And you can catch us next week right here. We've got a special guest, Sam Tuitupo, former All Blacks midfielder, former Blues midfielder. And Jip is particularly excited.
Oh, I sure am, the hitman.
The hitman, Sam Tuitupo. He is going to be fighting in the Fight for Life next week. So we'll find out a little bit about boxing. We'll talk a bit of midfield. We'll talk a bit about his career, what he's up to in England. We'll catch you all next week on the Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Mā te wā.